About the janitor kind of points it out to him. He says, hey man, are you encouraging the heart at all? You know, what kind of relationships do you have with your players now? You know, you used to pride yourself on great relationships. So one of the quotes I always share with young coaches or guys that I mentor or coached before is, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right? So if you're a leader and you're trying to motivate your people, and if you don't spend any time with them and you haven't established any type of personal or meaningful relationship, you probably can't push that person as far as you would like to push them. You probably can't elevate their performance and be as hard on them because they're saying, wow, this guy's coming at me with a little bit of confrontation versus coming out of love, right? So encouraging the heart, so they talked about that. So how do you apply that if I'm the leader? Work to establish those personal and meaningful relationships. So whether it's consultants that are on your team, whether you're a manager that manages team leaders, whatever it may be, my advice to you, and what of course they harp on in this book, is that if you establish these great relationships, yes, you can get more out of people. Yes, it will be more gratifying and fulfilling for you as a leader anyway, right? No one wants to come to work and have to crack down on people all the time. You would like for you to establish some guidelines, some rules, encourage people's hearts, and all of a sudden they want to perform. They have a fear of actually letting you down versus you cracking down on them with a hatchet, right? So be careful if you're using that technique. And I talked about amazing results. So what's the application for the employee? So many of you have seen the presentation by Coach Jim Valvano, Cutting Down the Nets. I know I've sent little clips of it out or what have you. But he was presenting in front of a huge company, and the question was, hey, how do you motivate your players, these 18 to 24-year-olds? And he says, I don't. I motivate one person every single day, right? You've got James Thomas Anthony Valvano. That's who I motivate every single day. So some of you are waiting for your manager to come over and hug you and say, hey man, have a good day. And some of you are like, I couldn't care less, I'm performing for me. Right? So really this is an application for all of us. We have to be self-motivated. You need to be able to wake up and get to work without someone saying, hey man, come on, I think you're good, I really love you, I care about you. I still think that's important, but there has to be some self-motivation factors because you're going to get to a point where you're going to have less interaction with your manager, your peers, or what it may be. The further you get up, the higher you rise in the company, and you're going to have to be a self-motivated person. Right? And who's going to motivate you to get here the hour early that you need in order to make a deadline? Okay? And then tell your manager what motivates you. It doesn't have to be cheesy and you walk up and say, Steve, I'm going to tell you what motivates me. It's money. It's this, that, and the other. That may not be the conversation. Right? But during these meaningful and personal relationships, during these one-on-one meetings, and you say, hey, I've got 2 kids. What motivates me is being able to pay for daycare properly, being able to do this and go on a trip or whatever. I need more money, so tell me how I can earn it. And they say, okay, great. We're going to motivate them with this. Right? We'll dangle some money out in front of them and elevate their performance. Right? Maybe money's not the deal, but maybe it's connect points. Maybe it's some other treasure. And then it also might just be, hey, tell me I'm pretty good every once in a while. Encourage me. I'll be motivated. I don't want to play some silly game in a contest on the CCC that doesn't motivate me. I'm 35, whatever it may be. Communicate that. Articulate that to the manager. We don't want to waste our time coming up with something we think would motivate you if it's not going to. Why wouldn't you just articulate that to them? Remember, advocate for yourself. But I think that's important when you talk about motivation. Now, talent's overrated. I mentioned that it is the title of a book that I read recently. All right? So this book, let me talk about the quote first, sorry. Conor McGregor, many of you know who this is. So this is a great quote. It talks about, in summary, basically, there is no such thing as talent. We're all equals. I'm obsessed. I'm not talented. He's obsessed with being successful. So he's willing to make sacrifices and work harder than the guy next to him because there's an obsession there. It's not about talent. He wasn't born the biggest, the strongest, the fastest. It didn't matter. But he's worked harder than the guy next to him or the guy that's in front of him in the cage that he has to beat his face in. He's worked harder. He's got confidence that he can do it because he's obsessed, right? So we'll talk a little bit about making some sacrifices, not necessarily obsession, but we'll talk about making some sacrifice here. So the book, by Jeff Colvin. Pretty good read. The theory behind it, or really the motive for writing the book, is they wanted to debunk this theory that people are born with an innate ability to be great. And it's all about hard work. So two of the examples they bring up is Tiger Woods and Mozart. And they talk about how they're performers at such an early age, and they're phenomenal, so they were born to be great. And the book suggests that many of us, if we were born into the same situation, would have been just as good. Now, I like to make that cheddar that Tiger's making, but so the example is, and I'll talk a little more about Tiger than I will Mozart, because I know a little more about Tiger. So Tiger was born to two parents that were on their second marriage. They were a little older. They both retired, right? So now all of a sudden you got a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home dad. You got Tiger Woods pops out. His dad had over 20 years of experience in the military as a teacher, an excellent communicator. So he has this background in coaching, communicating, instructing, and he loved golf, right? So all of a sudden, Tiger Woods, the minute he can sit in a high chair, is basically sitting in a high chair watching his dad hit golf balls in the garage. Finally, his dad comes up with an apparatus when he's 1 year old that helps him hold the club, so he can start hitting golf balls at 1 year old. And then, of course, it progresses from there. We all know kind of the outcome as far as when he started to become successful and phenomenal at golf, right? So many of us, maybe we were exposed to Earl Woods and him being retired, sitting at home, creating apparatus for us to hold a golf club, then maybe some of us could have ended up being as good at golf as that. Sam's close, Sam Richards, but he'll get there eventually. So one other thing they brought up, which I thought was important, and it talks about sacrifice, and I wasn't really familiar with this until the book, is the 10,000 hour rule. And it's also called the 10-year rule. So if you work 4 hours per day for 10 years, you hit 10,000 hours. And the 10,000 hours basically symbolizes the time that it takes to master a skill. Well, that's a lot of hours, and most of us have never put 10,000 hours in one skill and said, man, I'm going to be pretty good. We either get discouraged prior to that and say, I'm going to move on to something different, right? Or we didn't have an obsession early on to spend 10 years trying to perfect and master that skill, right? So I thought that was important because that just shows the sacrifice and the hard work that goes into actually being great versus saying, well, he's a little taller than me, he's going to be better, he's smarter, he has a little more experience. Whatever it is, it can be made up, right, by putting some time in. So the other part of the 10,000 hours is what kind of practice are you doing? It needs to be deliberate practice. And deliberate practice is defined is with great effort, specifically structured, immediate response or feedback, right? And then repetition. So an example of that, if I'm using ISR role, right? You may come in and say, I made 50 outbound calls today. Well, that's not deliberate practice. That's actually doing your job. So they talked about that as say, well, hey, when Tiger Woods goes out and plays 18, that's not deliberate practice. That's actually playing golf. It's not the sport. The deliberate practice would be, if I'm an ISR, is I'm doing a role play with someone, whether it's my manager or someone else that can coach me and give me great feedback, and now I specifically structure that to the gatekeeper that I might run into, right? A specific example of a gatekeeper. Or now what are those objections? And all of a sudden I go through a role play with someone that can help me and give me immediate feedback. That's deliberate practice. And of course I rep it and rep it and rep it. That's deliberate practice, not actually doing the job. Yes, you benefit from doing the job, and you're going to get some good repetition. But think about it in terms of, is that deliberate practice? Am I actually breaking down the skill and trying to benefit each little segment of it and improve it, right? And then Coach Valvano talks about in the same presentation, and I think this is important to note, is that the relationship between hard work and success is not, I guarantee you if you work hard, you'll be successful. That's not the guarantee. That's not the relationship between the two. But the guarantee in the relationship really is, if you don't work hard, I guarantee you won't be successful. That's the proper relationship, right? And many of you could point to a couple guys that had a lot of talent. Oh, well, he made it, Steve. Well, did he really make it? Did he actually ever reach the full potential that he could have? No, he didn't. Yeah, he might have made it further than you, but he didn't necessarily make it, right? So think about the relationship between hard work and success. It's not guaranteed. But I know if you don't work hard, you're not going to be successful. I can guarantee you that. So how to apply? Find yourself a mentor. Many of you say, well, I'm not really into that. I don't need a lot of people telling me what to do. I've got a manager already. Hey, the mentor can help you with the deliberate practice piece, right? They can help break that thing down and give you some experience and give you some knowledge and wisdom that you weren't able to get maybe from your direct manager or your peers, right? So find yourself a mentor. If you have a hard time with that, come see me after, shoot me an email or whatever. Let's work on it. There's a lot of people that are sitting in this room, but also sitting around this building that you have never met that would be honored to be your mentor and be able to help guide someone that's early in their career here and help you get ahead. All right, so keep that in mind. And then elimination diet. So many of you are familiar with elimination diet. So basically, you start removing things from your life, right? Your diet, what you eat, all right? And trying to find out, and then you start maybe slowly putting some of those back in. A lot of people cleanse and do all these things from a nutritional standpoint, but you're trying to see what the effects were on your body. But you're willing to give up some things, you eliminate it from your diet, right? So when we talk about sacrifice, and you start eliminating some things out of your diet, now your goal is probably, hey, I'm trying to get those bottom 2 abs to show up, right? Maybe I don't eat ice cream for 30 days. Whatever your goal ends up being, you start speaking life into it a little bit because you've given something up to do that. So how many of you want to buy a house? Some of you may have already done that. Some of you are planning to buy one soon, right? But you want to buy a house, yet, and you say, I'm not really there financially yet, I need to make more money. Maybe that's one of your complaints, right? But you stop at Starbucks, TLC, or Dunkin' Donuts every single day and get a coffee 5 days a week. At what, $3 a pop? Right? So think about if you gave that up and said, I'm not going to drink that coffee. I'm actually going to buy a bag of coffee, or I'm going to drink the free coffee that's up here, regardless of how bad it tastes. Right? You're going to drink that, fuel up, be productive, and save that $15, $20, $25 a week for an extended period of time. Think about how closer you will be to actually purchasing that home. Because you start speaking life into that goal of buying a home instead of saying, yeah, I kind of want to do that. Remember, a goal without a plan is just a wish. It's just a wish. Don't live by wishing. Have a plan, have a goal, and implement the plan. Sacrifice something. So my call to action to you is sacrifice something in your life. Create a goal. Many of you have goals. You haven't written them down, so you really haven't spoken any life into those goals, and that's why you haven't hit it. That's why you're walking aimlessly through life right now, and you haven't been able to live with intent, right? So write those down and start speaking life into it by giving something up in your life that actually could directly correlate into actually reaching that goal. And if you need help, come talk to me. We'll talk about your diet. All right? So I'm going to open up the questions, but here are some recommendations and resources that these are books that I've read, these are speakers that I listen to on a daily basis and a regular basis. You might like some, you may not, but I figured I would share those with you. And I appreciate your time and appreciate all of your support. Thank you, guys. Got about 5 minutes. Anybody has any questions? Great, must have been thorough. Appreciate you guys.